It's International Men's Day, a holiday I have really mixed feelings about, which makes it hard for me to join in the merriment. Before I can shine a spotlight on the issues and triumphs of men and boys around the world, I need to navigate my own frustrating ambivalence with my gender. Other men don't always inspire pride in my masculinity. Something about the things they say and do and pass on to other men that I tend to find pretty off-putting. But as a man, with little likelihood of that changing anytime soon, rather than give in to self-denial or self-hatred, I wanted to find a better version of masculinity, in whatever small way I can. To cultivate a wiser understanding of manhood, I'm going to talk about male video game characters who I find compelling and aspirational. They either make me feel good about my own masculinity, or they depict relatable struggles faced by many men, myself included. But to do that, I have to lay down some ground rules for who gets to make the list. First, they have to be an actual character, not just a player avatar with the option to be a man. Creating your own character is not allowed on this list, and neither are games where players can pick characters of different genders, but the story remains the same. Very few RPGs make the cut. Commander Shepard doesn't make the cut, Saints Row 4's President doesn't make the cut, Corvo Attano doesn't make the cut. And not just because he has fish guts and rat droppings where his personality should have been. The creators need to put deliberate focus on a man, his version of masculinity, and how the world responds to him through the mechanics. Secondly, these men have to be protagonists in their own games. Squad mates do not count, no matter how much you want to bond with Claude, bone down with Zevran, or get steamy with Nouvellette. The same goes for the men in any hero shooters or fighting games. While some may appreciate deep character lore in their own time, Lucio's charity work in Brazil doesn't really factor into my decision to blast Reinhardt off the villa walls. However, if a man is a co-protagonist with significant and unique contributions to the story, then he would be included in my list. Given who I'm bound to exclude with all my rules, please understand that this is a deeply personal list. The characters I connect to and the criteria I use to define admirable masculinity may be different from yours. I feel like I'm going to enjoy comments about who the men in my audience, which is to say my entire audience, except for my wife, love you kitten, feel the most affection for. As you'll find out, love is a pretty prominent theme in the men I've selected.
Is that what you wanted? Is that what you had in mind? You Nazi assholes. 'Cause that's all you're getting.
So, it's obviously very leftist, very bread tube of me to pick video gaming's preeminent fash basher as a representative of admirable masculinity. But hear me out. Beyond the obvious merits of putting the NSDAP in the DIRT, the Machine Games reboot of BJ Blazkowicz is mostly defined by his sensitivity. Alongside his skillful aggression is a profound connection to the world he's trying to save, the people he's trying to protect, and the ideals he's trying to preserve. He is unwavering in the value he places on human life, taking the time to appreciate the toll that hateful ideologies take on the nations they infect. His violent exploits are punctuated by a stark identification with the pain he witnesses. Brian Bloom's incredible voice performance clearly expresses the hardship of being at war, not simply for the survival of a nation, but for the existential viability of humanist values like love, freedom, and equality. BJ clings to these values to reassure himself that his struggles are worth the suffering he endures. And he means it too. His love for his friends, his wife, and his freedom may seem naive to those who've experienced reasons to be cynical. But it's that ability to imagine a better world which drives him to build better coalitions. He can have his white privilege dressed down by Grace and still keep his cool, knowing that she's going to make a better ally than the white people who were won over by lavish parades and precarious positions at the top of a genocidal Reich. He can trade harsh words with socialists, but still find the common ground enough to call them comrades. BJ is tired, often wearied by a cruel world, but despite it all, he remains an aspirational figure for men like me, as an unashamedly emotional being and a patient political ally. I really hope we get to see his story completed, a final note on what this man is capable of.
Few tales are told of Hades, whose very name inspires fear and penitence.
Hades brings a lot of nuance to its titular underworld setting. Amidst all the classic tales that have been remixed and reimagined is the main character, Zagreus, son of Hades and the god of blood. Zagreus yearns for a life outside the confines of the underworld, a repressive and stifling environment he shares with a father who barely understands him and doesn't seem to be making the effort. As he tries to leave, however, the journey becomes complicated. Not just because of the escalating challenges, but because of his rocky relationships.
You're a good friend, Baldy. I'm glad you're here. Okay.
Throughout the game, Zagreus becomes more aware of the effect he's had on the people around him, inspiring others, helping them make their stay in the underworld more pleasant, and even falling in love. With these realizations, Zagreus changes. His heart opens up to the people around him. He starts to appreciate what his home was able to give him, who's been there to aid him along the journey. He learns of the sacrifices others have made to ensure his well-being, and he makes amends with the people he's hurt in his efforts to escape. He even looks upon his father with renewed kindness. As the story progresses, he can see how Hades has done his best with the raw deal handed down to him by Olympus. Meanwhile, his uncles and his many cousins were free to grow impulsive, mercurial, and untrustworthy. Their gifts made Zagreus strong for a moment, but they could not do what a kind heart accomplished in the long run. His true strength was giving the love he wished to see from those around him. A love that solidified his relationships and made his home more welcoming than ever before. Plus, it can't be left unsaid how nice it is to see an openly bisexual man lead one of the most popular video games of the new decade. Zagreus has many heroic and admirable qualities young men can cultivate in themselves. So it's good to have stories where men who love men are seen as someone we want to be like.
But when you found me, I think that's when I knew, or started to realize, you know.
I was originally going to have an honorable mention for the Spider-Men, because even though these characters are probably most known for their comic book and movie appearances, their video game versions were doing something really interesting with the characters. And then Spider-Man 2 came out. And these guys shot way up the list. The Spider-Man premise is inherently relatable, since he's a superhero who has bills to pay, on top of all the science fiction nonsense. But Spider-Man 2 took the already strong writing of the first two games and put all that into the spider slingshot. Peter is a remarkable hero, but his shortcomings are catching up with him, as the dual responsibilities of being Spider-Man and a normal New Yorker wear down himself and his relationships. Meanwhile, Miles is struggling to cope with what the future has in store for him, hanging on to Peter's every word and action for advice on how to function, not fully grasping how Peter's approach to being Spider-Man has been flawed. And it makes sense, since up until pretty recently, Peter was the only Spider-Man. He didn't have anyone to look to when he needed help. He didn't have a master or an elder to guide him through this new responsibility. He was truly alone. It's going to take a lot for him to unlearn his entire worldview now that Miles has come along. So when Spider-Man 2 came out, tackled those difficult topics head on, and allowed each Spider-Man to come away as the best version of themselves, I was overjoyed. Peter reaffirms what made him so amazing this entire time, while Miles rises to meet his responsibilities with newfound confidence, even being there to remind Peter where those amazing qualities came from to begin with. I'm being light on spoilers while the game is still new, but please believe me. This story perfectly shows young men how strong they can be when they work together, remind each other of their strengths, and be vulnerable enough to give and receive love. Seriously, if you came away from this story thinking that Peter got done dirty because he needed some help from his friends, then not only have you misunderstood what made Spider-Man so compelling for the last 60 years, but you probably misunderstand men's mental health in general. Getting help doesn't make you weak. It's how you build a social, emotional, and healthy foundation, strong enough to stand on when things get shaky. Getting help is how you stay strong when the world tests you. And giving help is how you show others that you care. But you know what? Go ahead. Keep making fun of Peter for taking a mental health break and then wondering why so many men are miserable. You do you, bud. Whether the term is used to signal a positive trend in emotional storytelling, or whether it's used as a pejorative knock on the male centrism of gaming, the term dad game has gotten a lot of use in the past decade. I think the hot take industrial complex has tried a little too hard to make it seem like every game is about dads now, in the same way that in 2021, every game was about time loops. But if I had to choose the best dad in video games, it would definitely be Lee Everett from Telltale's The Walking Dead. Sorry Joel, your relationship with Ellie is really compelling, but a little too toxic to be aspirational. Honestly, same with Booker, same with Arthur. Oh shit, and Colt? Oh, you want to talk about Colt's father-daughter relationship? Ooh boy. I know the Telltale magic has worn off after saturating the market, failing to innovate, and then unceremoniously imploding in the most contemptible way imaginable. But there was a powerful magic in the idea that your choices would have consequences, not just for the story, but for how this little girl thought of you. Lee was about to serve a hefty sentence for killing in a jealous rage, as one does when they love not wisely but too well, so becoming Clementine's adoptive father was this new opportunity to prove his humanity, or to be constantly worried that he really can't live up to anyone's idea of what a good person is. Of course, the moment things start to look up, the game pulls its cruelest trick. In one fell swoop, both Lee and the player are robbed of the certainty that anything he did was enough. His chance to prove that he's a good man gets cut short, and Clementine's future gets tossed in the air. He couldn't even take the time to mourn his mistakes because he had to be strong for her. It's a potent denial of closure, a reminder that we're not guaranteed to leave the impression that we want on the people we care about. All we can do is our best, and hope that our loved ones are better for it. So basically, if you want to watch a grown man weep like a child, then remind him of Lee's story. And now for a few honorable mentions, just to catch some of the ones that couldn't quite make it to the list. I feel like any list of cool dudes in games isn't complete without Golden Boy Ezio Auditore da Firenze. And yeah, going back to Assassin's Creed 2 after all these years, Ezio is as lovable as ever. Mostly because on top of being fun and charismatic, he's also really nice. He looks out for his family, he's affectionate toward his friends, he's a lover and not a player.
I have plenty of outlets.
I meant besides vaginas.
And his humor comes from elevating others. When bad things happen to him, you're spurred to help a good guy take back what's his. Not sure how Ubisoft keeps screwing this up, but you know, whatever. Now there are some men who aren't really aspirational, but that doesn't stop Javier Dubois from being a genuinely great character. He's complex, driven, surprisingly competent when he needs to be, and hilariously incompetent when he probably should have had his shit together. There's a lot to admire about Harry, even as these qualities only briefly shine through the haze of self-destructive chaos. However, what I like most is seeing the internet express full-throated affection for a complete trash fire of a man. It's a sweet reminder that even an absolute dumpster of a person can still be loved, flaws and all.
Please, let's just...
I said, quiet, boy.
My name is...
I bet you thought you were going to see Kratos on this list, huh? While I do appreciate his growth over the two most recent God of War games, I find his character development was really in service of creating a better future for his son, Atreus. And he succeeded, because Atreus is awesome. He's intelligent, curious, compassionate, dutiful, and as a protagonist, quite skilled. He's great at making friends and encouraging those around him to build bridges, a skill that rubs off on others, including his reluctant father. I would love to explore the kind of man Atreus grows up to be, but that game doesn't seem too likely in the near future. And then we get to probably the most traditionally masculine character on my list. Sekiro can be understood as quite sensitive depending on how you understand his endings. There's something admirable about his unwavering sense of duty, and how far he'll go to protect his young master. What's even more remarkable is how, in the two more complicated endings, Sekiro abandons his duties to save his young master from grim destiny. Because nothing says love like shattering prophecy. Geralt of Rivia's subtle greatness is easy to overlook if you aren't really paying attention to what makes him special. He's more than just the ultra-competent, ultra-badass womanizer many men think they'd be in their medieval isekai fantasies. He really shines when you start to understand him through his worldview. His Witcher training required a lot of reading, meaning he's literate and scientifically minded. His education puts him at a distance from the serfdom superstition. But his morality and working class status leaves him even farther removed from the elites. He sees firsthand how the people of the continent are hurt by the machinations of the powerful, how the common people are terrorized by necrophages as these monsters eat the bodies of dead soldiers, or how aggrieved spirits haunt the victims of noble cruelty. He's seen how human ignorance across all social classes has led to the deaths and exiles of many sapient magical creatures, like godlings, dopplers, and maenads. Yet he's not so cynical that he won't comfort a distressed child or crack a joke to lighten the mood.
I won him straight, I did, in a game of cards.
Not how Mugg sees it. Claims he was mugged.
But even with his intelligence and righteous indignation, the thing that keeps me coming back to Geralt is the moral conflict at the center of his identity, his Witcher code. It's not self-interested apathy that keeps him neutral in political situations. It's having been burned by the unintended consequences of his actions. The world is too complex for him. Few of its problems can be solved with swords and magic potions, but that's often all he has to work with. He can't always act in a way that aligns with his morals, and that leaves him feeling powerless. So it's exciting and relatable to see him try anyway. He gets involved in messy political struggles to keep his friends and loved ones safe. He protects the people of the continent from dangerous creatures, even as they spit on him and call him a freak. He deals with cats, hissing at him and running away, all for the hope that one of them will remain calm in his presence. Nibbles is so cute, just look at him. He has every excuse to detach, stop caring, and turn a cold shoulder to the world. But he doesn't. Because even if the mutations have dampened its intensity, Geralt still has love in his heart for the people he can help, and the safer, happier world they can envision alongside him. I've been feeling pretty cynical about my gender recently, especially when it comes to finding entertainment. The amount of reaction, lashing out, and whining, so much goddamn whining, that's been done in the name of masculinity and manhood is just bleak and pathetic.
And I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I just don't think you see me for who I am. You want progressive masculinity to lead this century, but there's only so far a man can get in high heels.
Even the games I've listed above had misogynistic backlashes associated with their franchises. Spider-Man 2 had to deal with internet cretins complaining about MJ's looks. Witcher fans have been misogynistic and racist to Anya. Even Hades 2 had a small backlash to the new female hero. Thankfully, there's been more vocal clowning on people with blatantly misogynistic takes, but attitudes like these are an exhausting part of the culture on social media. It's at the point where a comedy YouTube channel about a guy who narrates movie fights has to pause the actual jokes in order to entertain a tangent about how Maggie Gyllenhaal wasn't hot enough to be worth saving. But in looking back on the audio-visual pollution emanating from so many corners of the internet, I realized something. I like these characters because they don't lash out. They don't spitefully displace their legitimate frustrations onto the people around them. They don't nurture malignant hatred that they can spit onto whatever group they've chosen to demonize. They build love and community, not competition and conspiracy. It's something I like to think about whenever that cynicism creeps back in. There's a hunger for well-rounded, sensitive, and healthier male figures in video games, as some of the ones I've listed were huge hits. I get a little insecure about being overly sentimental toward any game that isn't an auteur indie project. You know, trying to keep some of my gamer street cred and not dumping loads of praise onto corporate products. But I also need to be authentic to myself. BJ, Zagreus, Peter, Miles, Lee, and Geralt all inspire me. Now tell me who inspires you.
Thank you. It's folk like you restore my faith in humankind.